is I'm gonna go through, firstly, my criteria for what I expect from an England manager. Of course, Gareth Southgate is gone, he has resigned. Firstly, actually, I should say a word on the Gareth Southgate. Completely the right decision, and I also thank him for doing that because I think they wanted him to stay. So I'm glad he, recognised that. Maybe it's probably a good time to end it and step back. But I would also like to take this chance to say thank you, Gareth Southgate. The manner you did it in was pretty bad, but to be fair, you got us to 2 Euro finals, and I have to give you credit for that. So credit to him for that, and thank you for, progressing this English side to the point we are here today. But the time was right to move on, and now we must look at who is next. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through firstly the criteria of what I want and expect from an England manager. What sort of things am I looking for in an England manager for this role? I'm then going to look through each choice or each rumoured manager and then go through, if they fit the actual criteria. I will then pick my choice for the next England manager. And then at the end I'll say realistically who I think is actually going to be chosen. So yeah, get in the comments below, who do you guys think and who do you guys want to be England manager? I'll be really intrigued to see who you guys go for, so please do, even if you're not an English fan, let me know who you think we should be appointing. And yeah, let's begin. So let's start out with what I want, the traits, the attributes, the skills required for this job. So firstly, I want a manager who can coach a basic press. Now, as we know, England, we played some pretty horrific football under Gareth Southgate. In the Euros, the team showed too often that they haven't really been dragged into the modern era yet. Think about Pickford aimlessly booting the ball down the pitch, or Rice and Mainu failing to get on the ball when Pickford did actually try to play out. We haven't been able to progress up the pitch with the ball, and also particularly this tournament, we sat back too often and never really pressed opponents. The only time we really did this was versus Switzerland in moments. Here's the thing though, I'm not asking for a manager who plays heavy metal gun-ho football. In international football, as we've seen with Southgate, you can actually go pretty far being pragmatic. However, what you need is a coach who can coach a basic press. Look at Argentina and the way they play under Scaloni. It's not a heavy metal all-out attack style of pressing, but it's not sitting back like Stoke City. Scaloni employs a sort of mid-block, allows opponents to have the ball, but then sets up very basic pressing triggers and traps when opponents start to come near the halfway line. That's why Argentina have been so effective, and the same for pretty much every nation in the modern day. Austria, under Ralf Rangnick, they were a bit more aggressive with their press, but still it's the same principle. Rangnick is a coach who can teach his side some basic pressing principles, and that's why they did so well at the Euros. Canada have a Copa America under Jesse Marsch, again, a coach who has taught a very basic press to his team, which is why they reached the semi-finals. Spain, under De La Fuente, were one of the best pressers at this tournament again. They were not this gun-ho team, but they set up basic traps and sat off when needed, but pressed in the right moments and strategically. So what I require from an England manager is a manager who can teach a simple, basic, yet effective pressing system. It doesn't have to be some elaborate press. In fact, it's probably better it's not. You just want a coach who has a track record of getting a decent press for his side, as that's really what is effective in international football right now, and how we're going to win tournaments with England. I also want a manager who can coach basic patterns of play. Same thing again, when we have the ball, we need a coach who can teach very basic patterns of play in terms of build-up. Again, this has been England's biggest problem, a lack of ideas in terms of how to break down low blocks and progress up the pitch with the ball. In international football, it's pretty much like a less extreme version of club football because you don't get a lot of time with players. You basically just need to do all the things you do at club level to a much simpler and less extreme version. When it comes to patterns of play and build up, you just need a coach who has very simple patterns and tactics to succeed, really. Again, Spain didn't use some incredibly complicated tiki-taka system at the Euros. They just used a very simple patterns of play that got the best out of key individuals. Same for Germany, a very basic tactical plan to get the best out of Musiala and other individuals. We need a coach who can employ very simple, not overtly complicated patterns of play when we have the ball. Whether that be just simple triangle patterns, maybe an inverted fullback, two overlapping fullbacks, maybe it's having inverted wingers, whatever it is, just nothing too complicated to learn as you only have limited time with the players, but somebody who can actually coach us how to build up play. Because again, that's something we didn't really have with Southgate. Another big key aspect is man management, and this is one of the biggest requirements from an international manager. Because you have barely any time with the players, you need to harness great cohesion and morale with the team in such a limited space of time. We've seen so many talented international squads underperform because the manager has been unable to get them playing as a team. I mean, just look at our golden generation. They failed because our cliques at club level were not broken up at the international scene. This is one thing which credit to Southgate. He has done very well. He made his England side a team and managed the egos in the squad very, very well. So, we need somebody who is good at managing players, doesn't really get into much drama with players off the field, and can also manage big egos and big players, as we do have some star players like Bellingham, who I'm not saying has a big ego, but naturally you need to know how to manage a Real Madrid superstar compared to managing Lewis Dunk. Next up, I want from my manager adaptability. Another key asset of international football. You can't buy players to fit your tactical system like at club level, so I need a manager who can work with what they have and get the best out of what players are available. They also need that tactical adaptability in games, as knockout football is very tactical and about making those little changes to help your team. That's something Southgate didn't do well, as his subs and in-game management was poor and let us down many times. So we need a manager who can adapt very well to in-game situations and work well with the tools they are given. I'd also like a manager who has experience in knockout football. Now this is preferred but not desired. Obviously De La Fuente, Scaloni and others didn't have vast amount of experience in knockout football and they succeeded, but still, if you do have this it would be a bonus. Knockout football is very, very different to league campaigns, so a manager who does well in knockout football knows how to manage the pressure of it and those one-off games is very useful, although as I said, it is fine and you can get the job if you don't have this experience. I also need an understanding of the culture. Now this is a very important one, and it's understanding English culture. A lot of people argue over whether you need an English coach or not, but for me it's more about the culture and having a manager who understands English culture. You can have a foreign manager who succeeds, understand English culture and would ban ketchup from the English camp. Now, of course, ketchup being banned was not the reason we didn't win, but just those subtle things of understanding that, okay, English people love ketchup is part really of this culture here, right? So let's let them have it, as opposed to banning it, which would have made the players feel like, okay, this guy doesn't really understand us. So of course, an English manager understands the culture, but having a foreign manager is fine as long as they know how English people work and think. And finally, what I require from my England manager is a good spokesperson. Another trait which I will give credit to Southgate for was, for most of the time, he was a great spokesperson. As England manager, you're the face of the national team and the country, so you're going to need to be very good at communicating to the press and getting them on your side. As we know, English fans and the media can turn on you very, very quickly. We need somebody who can galvanise the fan base behind them and the team, similar to how Southgate did it, although we did see it this year as a bit of a different feeling around him, and that's probably from all the years of criticism. So I think that proves to you we need somebody who can handle that pressure. Right then, so now we know what is required, let's go through all potential candidates, from the realistic to the absurd, and decide who fits this criteria I've built. So we begin with Pep Guardiola. Now Guardiola has 1 year left on his contract at City, and has often talked about his desire to manage a national team one day. As a proud Catalan, it is unlikely he would ever manage Spain due to political reasons, and he has talked about countries like Italy and Argentina having to continue with their managers. Maybe he could be tempted by the England job then, as he has worked in England long enough now to know the culture. He would have top players, many of which he has coached or have been coached in a similar style to him, so tactically it would pretty much fit. He's very, very good as a man manager as well, motivating his teams, as he did win 4 Prems in a row, and that takes a lot of man motivating. He has a great record in knockout football as well. He basically ticks every box. Maybe the only one is that his tactics could be slightly too complicated to teach in such a short space of time with those players. And of course the big box he doesn't tick, it's not realistic at all, and we would also have to wait a year for him, so yeah, this ain't happening. I would be stunned if Pep Guardiola took the England job. Next up we have Jurgen Klopp. Now Klopp would breathe a fresh air tactically and man management wise. He's already proven he can get the best out of elite talent and foster a sense of unity and togetherness. He's pretty much the polar opposite of Gareth Southgate. Klopp favours a high defensive line and a high press. It's high risk, high reward, and as I said earlier, maybe that's a bit too gung-ho for international football. Anyways, just like Pep, regardless, the chances of Klopp joining are very, very slim. Klopp vowed to have at least 12 months off from management to recharge his batteries after leaving Liverpool. Since his emotional goodbye, he has been spotted dancing along to Taylor Swift at Anfield, catching up with old friends at the Euros and playing his beloved paddle. It would be a major surprise if he was willing to cut short his sabbatical. He also rebuffed an approach from the United States to take over as head coach, so we would have to wait at least 1 year for Klopp to even consider it. So yeah, this is off the table as well. Mauricio Pochettino. Now Pochettino, unlike Klopp and Pep, is very much available. His most recent coaching gig was leading the World XI at Stamford Bridge for Scots Soccer last month. More than 6 weeks have passed since he and Chelsea parted ways after just 1 season, and the agreement reached cut short his contract would provide no impediment if England came calling. Despite being a proud Argentine, Pochettino has made explicit his enthusiasm for the prospect as far back as in 2017, stating, "If I were to be an international manager one day, I'd relish the opportunity to coach the England national team." He's been coaching in England for a very long time, even us fans didn't at times. He had that dressing room behind him at all points of the season. He's okay as a spokesperson, depends on what Poch you get really, because he can be really good with the media, although at times he can get very angry, very cagey when things aren't going well. He has a solid record in knockout football actually, reaching the final of the Champions League with Spurs, a Carabao Cup final and FA Cup semi with Chelsea as well. But of course the big negative is he has never won a major trophy outside of his time with PSG, which would make him a bit unpopular amongst England fans, I suspect. Tactically, it's where I do have the biggest problem though. Pochettino's preferred style is grounded in high intensity and pressing, and Chelsea really pointed to a side that did not step off the gas out of possession last season. Issues in both penalty boxes were the key narrative for us last season. Our chance creation was really strong, but it seemed to come at the expense of a poor defensive record, with us having one of our worst seasons defensively we've ever had. And Pochettino struggled to find that balance for a lot of the season. International football is grounded in having strong defensive foundations, and Pochettino did not showcase that at Chelsea, and his approach is a bit too expansive to be honest for me, so I don't think it's a good fit tactically, and I would avoid Poch. Next up is Graham Potter, another ex-Chelsea manager. There are no club hurdles to overcome as Potter is currently still unemployed. He has been linked with multiple posts, but his instant availability only fuels a suspicion that the England job is the one he is waiting for. Potter's stock understandably dropped after his short stint at Chelsea, but his track record has shown that when given time, he has consistently improved individuals and teams. One of Potter's strengths is his capacity to develop young players. He arrived at Brighton as they were churning the squad and trying to lower the average age. Caicedo, McAllister, Trossard, Robert Sanchez and Cucurella made Premier League debuts under Potter, improved and were sold for significant fees to the Big Six. That adaptability to work with players is a good thing, and we have a very young squad as well, so that's a positive. Tactically, Potter does know how to coach a very basic press effectively. Although basic patterns of play, I'm not sure. As a Chelsea fan, I can tell you during his time with us, that was a big problem. We saw that we really had no identity with the ball and really struggled to break down low blocks, which is a big concern. Another problem is he failed to manage at Chelsea the big egos and the big squad. He failed to really gain the respect of some of those players, and maybe at the England squad with those big egos, his man management may not be the best. But one of the biggest problems though at Chelsea was his mannerisms to the fans. He failed to build any connection with the fans due to being the most robotic NPC on earth, and I worry as a spokesperson for England he could do poor. One thing he also has shown is he can snap at the press when it's not going well, so for me, with all this being said, it's a no to Graham Potter. Next up is Eddie Howe. Now the 46-year-old is a very attractive proposition for the FA, as he built on his transformative spell at Bournemouth with Newcastle to become the highest profile English manager in the Premier League. It is also why Newcastle want to keep him. Howe's long-term contract is believed to stretch into at least 2026. Interestingly though, his close allies among the ownership, Amanda Staveley and Medrat Gudasi, have recently departed, so potentially he could be available. Howe has transformed Newcastle since he joined with a front-footed aggressive style in and out of possession, commonly in a 4-3-3. Newcastle have become far more possession-based and they press opposition, where possible becoming one of the best pressing sides in the league. Despite a rocky defensive display last season, Howe has improved his side's attack immensely and brought Newcastle into a 21st century style of football. Stylistically, that's perfect for international football, and I actually think his style would fit very, very well with the England squad. It's not too overly expansive and complicated that players couldn't understand, but it's also good enough to compete. He kind of ticks that box which I was talking about in terms of coaching a basic press and basic patterns of play. Adaptability is also high for Howe, as he adapted his style massively from his time at Bournemouth to Newcastle, showing he can change depending on the team he is given. As a spokesperson, I think he's decent. I guess the only unknown is how he will cope with such a big job and managing those world-class players, as he's never really done that before in his career. He's also barely played knockout football, which is a slight concern, but I guess the big concern is, can you get him out of Newcastle? Next we have Thomas Tuchel. Now contractually there are no problems here. Tuchel left Bayern at the end of last season and is still a free agent. Whether he would be willing to join is another question. His time at Bayern was exhausting. A fight with the board over the need for defensive midfielder lasted the entire season. And in the weeks before he left the Allianz, Tuchel was engaged in a public disagreement with Uli Hoeneß. When Bayern U-turned and attempted to keep Tuchel, one of the reasons he resisted was because he had felt exhausted. Most likely he will take some time away from the game before considering another offer. That being said, he's an incredible fit for the role. Having managed in England with Chelsea, Tuchel knows very well English culture, although I'm not sure it would go down well with fans if we had a German manager. Anyways, tactically though, it's perfect fit. Despite a disappointing season last year, the underlying numbers from Tuchel's side show how dominant they were in both boxes. Competing with a history-making Bayer Leverkusen side was not part of the plan, but Bayern's XG difference per 90, which basically accounts for the quality of chances created and conceded, was the best of any side across Europe's top 5 leagues. That shows that clearly, tactically, he is very good, and he also has great adaptability. At Chelsea being much more defensive, building a great defensive system with a 5-back. At Dortmund and PSG, much more attacking and free-flowing. And then at Bayern, a bit of a mix of both. So he would adapt very well to this England team and figure out the best way to play with those players. Tuchel's tactical acumen is undeniable, but question marks over his temperament might be a factor that works against him. Across his 3 most recent roles at PSG, Chelsea and Bayern, he averaged a tenure of 1 year and 9 months. International football is different, but if England are looking for a long-term vision, Tuchel might not be the man. Next we have Lee Carsley. Now Carsley would be the easiest of all the candidates to replace Southgate. The FA would simply be negotiating with themselves. Carsley has been the manager of England's under-21s for 3 years, having previously coached for under-19 and under-20s. This means that, like Southgate before him, Carsley has years of experience at St George's Park and understands better than anyone what the England DNA means. After Carsley led England's under-21s to the Euros last summer, he spoke about his players' roles being more important than their position. Attack-minded midfielders Curtis Jones and Angel Gomez were deployed in holding roles, while winger Anthony Gordon spearheaded the attack as a number 9. It speaks to the flexibility required within international football and is something Carsley has been honing since joining the England national setup. The problem though is it's a massive risk. Of course, De La Fuente made that step up, but it's still a huge jump from under-21 football to men's football, and he's never managed a senior team his entire career. The English public would also be unimpressed. Ascending from the under-21 job may have worked for Southgate, but it is worth remembering that his appointment was initially only temporary. The England team were also at a far lower point, while Southgate had far greater name recognition than Carsley. Carsley does interesting things tactically, but they would be unlikely to sway public opinion from seeing him as an uninspiring appointment. Next up, Serena Weigmann. This would be a fun and pretty cool appointment, but it's highly unlikely. Weigmann has only just renewed her contract with the Lionesses, signing a new 3-year deal until the end of the 2027 World Cup. However you want to outline her tactical style, there is a clear current running through it: success. After leading England women to the Euros, she became the first manager to win the competition with 2 different countries. She knows how to navigate through a major international tournament. Within those tournaments, she rarely shuffles the pack. She named the same starting XI across every Euro 2022 game, with scheduled substitutions at scheduled times. She also did show at the 2023 World Cup a bit of pragmatism, switching from her 4-3-3 formation to a 4-3-back formation. Dominant, creative, attacking football is essential to her style of play, and she has shown that she can unlock the potential in her squad to win major tournaments at the international level. Weigmann ticks most boxes, to be honest. The only issue is, of course, she's never managed in the men's game. And can she translate her success in the women's game to the men's? I don't know. It's a big risk, as nobody's ever really made that move successfully yet, so do you really want to gamble like that? Probably not. So a no from me. Next up, Thomas Frank. Now, Thomas Frank has been in high demand this summer. He held talks with Chelsea before they appointed Maresca, and also Man United before they kept Ten Hag. It feels like he will not be at Brentford much longer, and taking over England would represent a significant step up. Frank would bring a clear tactical philosophy. His 5-3-2 formation is competitive, disciplined, and a nightmare to play against. In the past 3 seasons, only Brighton have taken more than Brentford's 35 points against the Big Six. Equally, his ability to shift his side to a 4-3-3 across the season shows a tactical versatility that would be highly suited to international football. The fact that Frank has overseen Brentford rise to the Premier League and has now kept them there for 3 consecutive seasons speaks to the job he has performed. He is an experienced coach and a good motivator and figurehead for the club. It would be a sensible appointment, but there are problems with inexperience. He's never managed on such a big stage before and could get caught up by all of it, kind of similar to how Potter did at Chelsea, although generally in terms of style, it's a decent move. Okay, and finally we have Frank Lampard. Now, Lampard actually coached England only a month ago in Soccer Aid. He's been on the lookout for new coaching opportunities and was a candidate for the Canada national team job earlier this year. That signalled Lampard's openness towards international management, and given his 106 caps put him 8th in all-time appearances for England, it is likely that England's men's job would rank alongside Chelsea at the very top of his coaching ambitions. If he were offered the opportunity, he would definitely take it. Given the contrasting remits that Lampard had in the dugout, it is difficult to say what tactical approach he truly wishes to implement. A theme taken largely from his Derby and Chelsea management would be that Lampard does favour a possession-based approach within a 4-3-3 structure with a high press. At Everton, Lampard was forced to elect a more pragmatic approach, switching between a 4-3-3 and a 5-back. I will say that even though Lampard has been pretty trash as a club manager, I actually do think international football suits his style very, very well, as he can coach very basic pressing principles and patterns of play. Of of course, I do worry that he has failed at almost every club he's been at, and it wouldn't go down with the fans due to that reputation. This job is far too big for him right now, and he needs to prove himself elsewhere. But as I said, I do think international would suit him, but of course it's a no. So those are the main candidates. Let me know if I missed anybody, but with all of that being said, who do I think would be the best option? Now, being realistic, taking like Klopp and Pep out of the situation, for me it's between Howe, Thomas Tuchel, and maybe Thomas Frank. The others have too many negatives around them, or, as I said, are simply not realistic. So my choice, my dream manager for England, maybe I'm being a little bit biased here, but it's Thomas Tuchel, Stommy T. He's absolutely incredible in knockout football. His record is great. He has such good adaptability to work with the tools at his disposal. His tactics are fairly simple and would translate very well into international football. He understands English culture very well and is of course available. Now this of course depends on if he wants the job, but if I'm in charge I chase Tuchel straight away as my number one choice, and I don't see any problems if he was to become England manager. Now if Tuchel says no, then I go for Eddie Howe. His adaptability and basic but effective style of play would be perfect for international football, so I would get him as second choice. But again, I don't know if he takes the job as he is building something at Newcastle. Now if he says no, I would consider Frank, but to be honest, he would probably say no as well, so I guess I would probably take Potter in that situation, as he's probably a definite yes. He's fairly decent. I do have concerns over his man management and character. I'm not sure if he can handle this job, and his style of play at Chelsea was a bit poor, but generally he's a decent manager, so I guess he would be my third choice. But yeah, that's what I'll go for. Now what do I think is going to happen? To be honest, sadly, I do think it's going to be Lee Carsley. Tuchel, Poch, Klopp, Pep, all of those guys definitely won't happen. I think they view Southgate as a great success, and Carsley has arguably done a better job than Southgate at youth level, so I think they will just take that gamble on him. It's the safe option as they know him well. It's underwhelming, but I guess it's not the worst appointment in the world. Whoever is our manager, I will back them, but they have a huge job on their hands. Anyway, those are my thoughts on who should be our next manager for England. Let me know who you think should be England manager in the comments below. If you have enjoyed this video, please leave a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see